Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of Project Play. What better place to start than the would-be sorta but not quite mascot of the original PlayStation? It's gotta be... where's he gone? Here he is. It's Crash Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot was developed by Naughty Dog in an attempt to transition the traditional side-scrolling platformer into the new 3D generation that had just emerged, and create a potential new mascot for the new PlayStation system by Sony. Not that Sony necessarily wanted one. Long story short, after considering a number of lesser-known Australian animals, Naughty Dog settled on the Bandicoot, eventually naming him Crash because he crashed into things. At the time, Universal wanted the character to have the name Wez, Wuzzy, Wuzzle, or Willy the Wombat. Apparently the developers threatened to quit if they couldn't call him Crash, and thank God they did, because Willy the Wombat really doesn't do it for me. As you can imagine, it's a pretty simple story, so I'll go over that pretty quickly. We've got an evil genius, Dr. Neo Cortex, who's experimenting on animals to create an over-the-top and super powerful animal army on a collection of small islands somewhere near Australia. His goal? Take over the world, of course. What else?
This time I shall reign triumphant!
So after these experiments fail on Crash, and Crash accidentally manages to escape,
Capture him!
Uh-oh!
They move on to Crash's love interest, a bandicoot that looks nothing like a bandicoot. I mean, really, look at her, it makes no sense whatsoever. Crash Bandicoot's goal is beat the bad guy, save the girl. What else? And the goal of the game? Get from point A to point B. It's a traditional platformer at the end of the day. What else is it going to be? While that does sum it up, there is a little bit more to the gameplay. As you can probably guess, through each level you'll be presented with a number of obstacles and collectibles that Crash can interact with via either spinning or the age-old platforming mechanic, jumping. There's a great variety of environments, and the game is one of the most visually impressive for the time period on any system, really pushing the boundaries of what the PlayStation could achieve at a point fairly early in its lifespan too. Some things to avoid in the levels include holes, fire, electricity, spiky things, and basically anything else that looks dangerous. A variety of enemies are found throughout the game, generally following a set path and killing you should you get in their way. Most of the time they take one of three forms: animal, human, and machines. To help you on your way, you can acquire some Witch Doctor masks.
What have I got?
These are inhabited by the spirit of something called Aku Aku.
What have I got?
These will allow you to take an extra hit prior to dying. If you don't have any masks, it's one hit and you're dead. Collect 3 masks in a row, however, without getting hit, and you'll become invincible for a short period of time. But take note, you can still die to pitfalls. You can also collect Wumpa Fruit. Yes, Wumpa Fruit. When I was a kid, me and my friends always called them apples, but I do know of other people who would call them mangoes, and I can see the resemblance to both of those things. Collect 100 Wumpa Fruit, you get an extra life. Pretty standard stuff for a platformer, nothing new. If you find a little portrait of Crash Bandicoot, you'll get an extra life also. If you find little portrait tokens of Torna, Embryo or Neocortex, you get sent to a bonus stage, and I'll talk about them a little bit later on. Littered across the levels are a ton of crates. These were originally added to the game to fill out empty space, as the hardware of the original PlayStation couldn't have too many enemies on screen at one time. These crates helped give Crash his name and served a number of functions. Some contain rewards, some can be jumped on to bounce higher. TNT crates explode, but if you jump on them as opposed to spinning, you get a 3-second countdown. And metal crates can't be destroyed, but often serve as extra platforms. If they have an exclamation mark displayed on their side, they take a similar role to a button or lever would in other games, revealing hidden paths and crates, opening doors, and that kind of stuff. If you destroy every crate in a level, you'll be rewarded with a gem. What do gems do? Well, they each represent a platform in the penultimate level, the Great Hall. Collect them all, and you can jump across these platforms to unlock an alternate ending to the game. Some levels have crates that can't be accessed by Crash until he collects a coloured gem in another level, revealing a coloured platform in an older level that will give you access to those extra crates, allowing you to collect the gem in the older levels. So this gives you a reason to backtrack to earlier levels in the game to collect those gems. Now, getting a gem will also give you a chance to save the game at the end of the level. The save system absolutely sucks. You can tell it was the early days when it comes to saving a game up to the point you're actually at. I'll do my best to explain it. So earlier on I mentioned those little portrait token things you can collect that take you to a bonus stage. Well, if you reach the end of a Torna bonus stage, you're given the opportunity to save the game, or get a password. This will save your level progress either up to the level you're currently doing, or sometimes an earlier level that you'll have to complete again. Once you use a Torna bonus round save, all the prior bonus stages for Torna are disabled, so you can't keep backtracking and replaying bonus rounds to save the game. As for the other bonus levels, the Embryo ones are completely unnecessary. They're really difficult, really frustrating, and you just get lives as a reward, which are easier to get elsewhere. There's no save point, no special items, nothing. That's it. You only have 2 Neocortex bonus levels. These will grant you a key if you complete them, and the chance to resave your game, so that's something at least. It's better than the Embryo ones, but they are pretty hard still. Now, if you do save after obtaining a gem or a key in the game, it will only save the fact that you have obtained a gem or a key. It won't save your level progress. That is something to keep note of, and it's one of the biggest flaws in the game as far as I'm concerned. Unless you already know how it works, you're going to assume that the game saves work like any other game save. You save the game and it saves your progress, right? Nope. This is the early days, and you've got to remember, it didn't quite work that way back then. This also means that there are a limited number of saves in the game technically. You have to earn them by beating bonus rounds or collecting the items. If you finally beat a tough level but you didn't manage to find the bonus round in it, and you've got to turn the game off for whatever reason, then tough luck, you're going back next time. There's nothing you can do. And trust me, this game can get pretty damned difficult. One of the levels I find most annoying are these ones shrouded in complete darkness. The Aku masks act as a temporary light source in these levels, so you have to rush through before you're stuck in pitch black with no idea where anything is or where to go. I do get that it's kind of neat in terms of level design, it's certainly creative, but you combine this with the nightmare save system and it's a stressful experience overall. The bridge levels can be hell as well. The playing area is extremely narrow, often with these tiny falling platforms and moving enemies that force you having to really have perfect timing, as you rarely get a chance to stop and think. There's a neat little trick with these levels though. Just hop up here and there you go. You can skip any parts that are too annoying. Be careful though, it's easy to judge the jump wrong and ruin any progress you've managed to make in the level so far. Sometimes it is easier to just play it normally. bosses, however, are all pretty easy. They all have fairly easy to follow patterns and they don't take many hits to kill, plus the game will often start you on these levels with 2 Aku masks, so you have 3 hits before you die, not just 1. Cortex is definitely the most challenging boss, being that he's the end boss, so that makes sense, but even he can be figured out in just a few attempts. Compared to some of the levels, Cortex could be way worse. Looking back, it is interesting to see what critics thought at the time of release. Back then, in 1996, 3D platformers were not commonplace, they were brand new. It was part of the new generation of gaming and this new generation of consoles that were all in 3D and fancy and all that kind of stuff. Developers were experimenting with what they thought would and wouldn't work. The visuals were universally praised at the time, and you can see why. It still looks great to this day. At the time, it was one of the best looking games you could get anywhere. Simple as. I highly suggest looking up some of the little tricks that Naughty Dog used to get this game looking as good as they did on the PlayStation system. What saw the most criticism, interestingly, was the gameplay. At the time, it wasn't considered revolutionary at all. It looked like a next-gen game, but it didn't play like one. And it's actually a fair point for the time period. I mean, think about it. Crash Bandicoot is essentially a 2D platformer. Hell, a fair chunk of the game is almost exactly that. With the addition of new camera perspectives. Not only can you see Crash from the side, but now you can see him from behind. And also running towards the screen. The levels are designed in very linear, straight paths that keep the action flowing at a great pace, but can also be argued to not take a full advantage of the whole new world that was 3D in the same way a game like Super Mario 64 did. Take note that Mario was developed and released around the same time as Crash Bandicoot, so many comparisons were made at the time, pretty fairly too. Crash Bandicoot ended up selling around 7 million units. Just shy actually, but we'll say 7 million. It made it the 8th best-selling game on the PlayStation 1, so say what you want, it was pretty damn successful and it left its mark on video games. But the big question is, would I recommend it to today's audience? And the answer is, it sort of depends. You kind of have options now, that's the thing. The thing is, the original game does show some signs of age. The save system in particular, I think that's terrible. But if you have the means to play the original, go ahead, it's still a pretty good game, and it's interesting to see where this franchise started. However, if you have the much better sequels, or, of course, I think I've got it here. There it is. Always sort your games in alphabetical order, makes it nice and easy to find them. You got the Insane trilogy as well. That's a way better version of this game. It has some problems, we'll get to that one day. But at least in terms of saving and ease, most people have a PlayStation 4 these days, right? You can play that version. It's perfectly fine. I guess in the end, what I'm saying is, you don't have to go out of your way to play Crash Bandicoot on PlayStation 1. There's enough options available. But you don't have to go out of your way to avoid it either. It's still a good game by today's standards. And here's a little bonus something as well. I happen to own the Japanese version of Crash Bandicoot, which has a few little differences actually. Now, from what I'm aware, in Japan at Sony at the time, certain big names didn't think that highly of Crash Bandicoot, at least in regards to being a mascot or anything like that. Artwork for Crash Bandicoot was changed to match Japanese standards, and things like TV commercials for it were downright weird at times. Crash did have his own theme song in Japan though. Amazing. In the actual game itself, Crash has a completely different voice, which is interesting considering he only speaks in yelps, noises and grunts. Here's what most of you will be familiar with. And here's what they had in Japan. Aku will also pop up from time to time to give what I assume are gameplay tips and instructions in a speech bubble. Also, the Wumpa fruit are actually called apples in the Japanese version of the game. At least that's what it says in the manual apparently. So in a weird way, those of us who called them apples when we were growing up were right in some part of the world. Now apparently this version has some adjustments to the difficulty as well, but I've not nearly played enough of it to have noticed anything like that. I've only checked out the first couple of stages and it's mostly the same other than the things I just mentioned. Now, big thanks to watching this very first episode. This is very much a test run. I am not fully equipped to do a video series like this, and the chances of me actually achieving this goal are billions to one. But I thought I'd give it a shot anyway, and Crash Bandicoot was a pretty easy start, so hey, let's see how this goes. These videos are supposed to be kind of bite-sized and quick to produce, so expect lots of quick cuts, choppy editing, and just remember, it's not supposed to be the biggest production value in the world. I need to be able to get these out snappy, else there's no chance of this happening. Not fully made my mind up on what to do for episode 2 yet. I've got a couple of things in mind, but hey, we'll see what happens. See you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed it at least a little bit.